In this lesson, you're going to learn how to walk the interviewer through an LBO model, which is one of the most common interview questions you can get on the topic of leveraged buyouts. Now, similar to the walkthrough that we did for the merger model in a previous lesson, I recommend that you always start with some kind of summary sentence to explain what the purpose of the model is and what the key inputs and outputs are, and then you divide it into a step-by-step process to make it easier to understand, easier for the interviewer to verify that you understand it, and easier for you to remember and walk through as well. As with the merger model, I recommend keeping it to 30 to 60 seconds. Go in at a very high level, and then at the end you can ask if they want more detail or if they want you to talk about any of the steps that you discussed in more detail. So here's an example of how you might walk through a LBO model in an interview. In a leveraged buyout model, you assume that a private equity firm acquires a company by using debt and cash. They run it for several years, and then at the end of a 3 or 5 year period, they sell the company to earn a return on their investment. Step one of an LBO model is to make basic transaction assumptions about the purchase price, debt, and cash used. Step two is to make a basic sources and uses schedule showing where the funds are coming from and where they're going to. Step three is to modify the balance sheet and make adjustments for items like goodwill and intangibles getting created. Step four is to project all three statements for the company and make a debt schedule to show how debt changes over time and what kind of interest expense they're paying. And then step five is to calculate the investor returns at the end. Figure out how much cash the PE firm put down in the beginning and then how much they're getting back at the end, and use that to calculate the return on investment. So that's an example of how you could do a very quick walkthrough for an LBO model. I realize a few of those points we did not touch on here, specifically step three, what I mentioned about adjusting the balance sheet. That's something that we skipped over, but the concept there is very similar to what we did in the merger model for goodwill creation and balance sheet adjustments there. But what I just described, the example I just gave for the walkthrough, is really all you need to say for the most part in interviews. If they want more detail on any part, they can ask you to do so at the end once you've finished. So that's how you walk through an LBO model. Coming up in the next lesson, we're going to be looking at some other common interview questions on the topic of leveraged buyouts and LBO models, and you'll learn how to effectively answer those in investment banking and private equity interviews.